okay, if you don't do it 100%, now you have these potential for massive failures. It has to be perfect in order for it to operate perfect. And I think that is absolutely a big issue.
Welcome back to the Modern Craftsman podcast. Today, Nick and I are diving into what I consider two big topics, at least ones that are top of mind for me right now. One, what actually makes a good employee, and two, whether the industry is starting to lose its way with building science. From airtight envelopes to over-engineered HVAC systems, we're asking if we've taken things too far and what it really means to build well with good people and good judgment.
This podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. Quick question. What's the biggest door you've ever built into a home? Tyler, I think you're doing a 12-foot wide on your house. But what about 20 feet wide or even 40 feet wide? I'm not sure if you knew this, but Andersen makes gigantic glass doors that can be up to 60 feet wide. Of course, you can downsize these a bit too if that's a bit too much. But the point is, Andersen has gigantic walls of moving glass, and lots of pros don't realize this. And there's options for pocketing, stacking, folding, sliding, pivoting, and even being placed around corners or curves. Andersen's big doors also have options for weather protection, and with Andersen's proven track record of support, installing them is easier than you might think. For more information, head over to andersenwindows.com/moderncraftsman.
This podcast is brought to you by Buildertrend. Let's be real. Estimating takes forever, and it kind of sucks. And even after you've sunk hours into it, there's still that doubt in the back of your head, did I miss something? Buildertrend changes that. You can build accurate estimates faster, pull in real cost data, and turn them into client-facing proposals with just a few clicks. No more reinventing the wheel every single time. If you want to cut your estimating time and boost your accuracy, schedule a demo at buildertrend.com/mcdemo and see how it's done.
This podcast is brought to you by Harnish Workwear. Workwear hasn't kept up with the times until now. Harnish Workwear is bringing high-performance design and innovation to the job site with gear that's built to move, breathe, and last. No bulk, no gimmicks, just sharp, functional apparel made for top-tier performers who expect excellence and have a devotion to mastering their craft. I've been wearing the hoodies, the pants, and, of course, the t-shirts, and every detail feels intentional, smart pocket placement, stretch where it matters, and fabric that performs in any weather, especially now that it's getting a little bit colder outside. Check out Harnish Workwear at harnishworkwear.com and be part of the limitless growth and elevated purpose.
So hop on to our website or Harnish's website. We have the Modern Craftsman, the new shirt out. If you've listened to the podcast at all over the past few years, we don't charge for the podcast. It doesn't cost you money. But if you've enjoyed the podcast, a simple thank you can be to hop on, support Harnish, support Modern Craftsman, purchase the t-shirt for not a lot of money, and we thank you for that. So these are two things that are top of mind for me. One, just being around people, managing people. I guess the same could be said for subcontractors. What makes a good subcontractor? What makes a good employee? Just being around people, managing people, work-related, life-related. And then the second one, I was just at the Fine Home Building Summit, and it was a heavy, heavy emphasis on building science. And I've always been of the mindset where I'm a bit of a more conservative approach. I work on older homes. We're doing renovations. But just some of the things that we're looking to implement and integrate from a building science perspective, to me, seems as though we are looking to lay the golden egg. The processes and the systems don't seem to be that repeatable. And I think that there are stakes, heavy and high stakes for when things go wrong. So those are a couple of things that I wanted to touch on today. But we can start with what makes a good employee. So, Nick, when you think of the people that you've worked with in your life over the past 15 years, I guess 10 years, 12 years owning NS Builders, what has made them good employees? Was it skill, mindset, something else?
I think it adapts over time. I do think that a lot of it centers around mindset, but skill is obviously a part of that, where I've hired people strictly based on personality or the idea that they have the right mindset and they can learn it. the issue I have with that specifically is that if you don't have the ability to teach someone, that person never actually thrives in your environment. And because there's always the, hire based on personality. You can always teach the skill set. And part of me agrees with that, with the exception of the fact that if you don't have the ability or time to do that, then that person never learns and ultimately becomes, more of a burden than anything.
And I think that's like what you said with time is the most important, because most people in our industry don't have a dozen employees. Most people don't have a training program in place. It's you're going to work alongside either the owner of the company or a lead on the project, and you are basically going to shadow them, and nobody has the budget or the time or the resources to just stop and teach. So I think that's huge when you discuss what that learning process looks like, because not everyone does learn that way.
Yeah, and but I think to support that, when I look back at the last 12 years, the best employees have been the ones that come in and they have some sort of skill set, whether that's experienced or semi-experienced, but ideally they have the attitude that I'm here to get shit done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to work, give me a task, I will figure it out. And it's not, it's not this constant, I'm not sure how to do this, or how do you want me to do this, or the constant questioning.
Yep.
I think that was something that I learned early on, is that if I'm asked to do something, before I ask for instructions or, hey, how do you want me to do this? I need to give it my best shot and see if I can figure it out on my own. And I think, at least from my perspective, the guys and girls that have come on our team and do go after problems and just figure it out, that those are the employees that I'm like, yeah, you're cut from the same cloth. You understand the bigger vision here. And ultimately, like, that's, when you're building a team, whether it is a 2-3 person team or a dozen people, I think the most important thing is, what is the owner's or the founder's vision, and understanding like how everyone plays a role into that. I've talked about it before, but I've had plenty of conversations with the entire team that just, ultimately said, hey, this is what our vision is. And if you're not aligned with it, totally understand. And I'm happy to, give you a reference if you want to step out. And I've had people step away from the company and be like, yeah, that's just not aligned with what I want to be doing. Totally fine. And I recognize that my vision has changed over the last 12 years. I think it's always, when you zoom out, I think it's always been the same. But,
Yeah.
When I continue to get more and more focused.
Well, I think that's also part of growing as a person, right? If your goals remain the same and your business vision remains the same, you're probably going to stagnate and not grow. So I think that's probably just evolution and growing as a human being. I think that a lot of times when we're hiring, we do, at least personally, from a smaller business perspective, we can overvalue skill, because realistically speaking, at the scale that I am, do I need somebody who can fully perform tasks on their own? Probably not all the time, because if I had 2 jobs going on, which completely changes the structure of my business, yeah. But there's a lot that comes along with that. So for me, I want somebody who's confident, like you said. I don't want somebody to come in and ask me every single step that they have to take. Is this right? Is this okay? Is this good enough? I want somebody who's curious, who asks the right questions. I want somebody who has a willingness to learn. Intelligence is huge. Sadly, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things that we're trying to negotiate on any given job. I need somebody who can stay there with me mentally and be engaged and just understand what's going on. In order to learn what we're doing and manage the day to day, you have to be somebody who's intelligent. And the big one for me is somebody who is ambitious and motivated to learn. And I think that can override skill a lot of times for me. I think that you have to have the principles down. You have to have the understanding. I don't want somebody coming on board from a different industry who just has no idea how to work with their hands, who are really starting at square one, where this is a hobby for them that they really want to explore. I think you could probably start somewhere else prior to joining what I need from an employee, but somebody who's ambitious and willing to learn, who's just chomping at the bit every day to gain more knowledge and hone their craft, to me is really one of the biggest attributes of being a good employee.
I'm sitting here listening to you say that, and I'm realizing it also really, really depends on the role that you're talking
Oh
about.
yeah, for sure.
Because there's people on my team that I'm like, I need you to come in and just immediately get shit done, or be, willing to just go figure it out. And there's other roles where it's like, hey, I have exactly your role. Like, this is exactly what I need you to do, and I need you to do it, every day. Like, this is your the cadence of what I need out of you. So I think it does come down to, what the roles and responsibilities are of that employee, and ultimately, how does it help the bigger picture?
I
Like,
mean,
what?
even business size, right? If
Mhm.
if you're a company my size, what I need in an employee, there's a sweet spot for that, right? They can't be overqualified, but they also can't be underqualified. But for you, you have a little bit of flexibility depending on the role, where you may be able to bring somebody in who just is a set of hands who you're really training, or you might need somebody who's way more high level than I might ever need. So I think it really does depend on the type of jobs you're doing and also just the size of your company.
Mhm.
So we've all hired people who are extremely talented, but they show up and time kind of drags on, and whether they lose interest or they just don't feel like they're a good fit, they become less reliable, possibly inconsistent. How do you deal with somebody who's super talented? And I can think of this from like an athletic standpoint as well, right? Where you have the best player on the team puts the least amount of work in. How do you deal with that from a company structure?
God, the sports analogy. I'm not a sports guy. I think everyone knows this at this point. But watching coaches let go of great players is something that I watch, and I'm like, man, I know how hard that is to some respect, right? Because it's happened here in business, and whether I've had to let go of good people, or I've had to or good people have left, it's just difficult all around. I want to Let's talk about some of the people that have left or that I've had to let go of, and some of the failures that I've made before we get to like the good people that end up outgrow or we outgrow. I made a lot of hires based on personality and or like the potential out of someone. I could think of like four people right off the top of my head where I met them for coffee. They seem like, oh, this kid seems great. He just needs a little tweaking, and we'll get his skill set where he needs to be. But he just wasn't the right person for the team. He
Yeah.
was a little bit odd. He didn't have the same personality. I'm realizing the more and more I do this, that it does, like, you look around at the team I have now, we all have a very similar personality. Like, we have similar interests, like it's just that is part of the group, and the people that come in and don't have those similar desires or similar characteristics of life, like, they just don't end up hanging around very long.
It's interesting too, because that's not something that if you wrote down quality attributes of an employee or an ideal employee, a lot of times you wouldn't think, hey, their personality type matters, their hobbies, their interests matter. But when you do have even you with a dozen employees or however many there are, it's still a very, very small team in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And it is something that's very important because everyone is extremely close on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. I think a lot of the things you wouldn't even be able to legally, hire for. Be like,
Yeah.
oh, are you? Are you in good shape? Do you like to work out? Like, do you prefer to eat health? Like shit like that.
Yeah.
It's just, and you see it in the team mentality where it's like everyone wants to kind of live a similar life. Now we have very different hobbies and do stuff outside of work, but ultimately, like we want to be. I guess what it comes down to is like we all consistently want to be the best version of ourselves.
Yep.
And I think that's the team that I really appreciate that we're growing into. Now, looking back 12 years, I've had some great people on my team that ultimately we've either let go of or they've left. And I think when it comes down to it, the reality is if they are hurting the team in any way, despite how great of an employee they might be, the you have like that's a difficult, you're going to face that no
Yeah.
matter, like you will always have to come across this at least once. You have to let them go, and because they aren't aligned with what the new vision is, or they've become complacent in their role, and other people are looking at them as like, well, they're only performing at 80%, so why do I have to perform at 100? And that's a real thing. I ignored that for a long time, especially early in my hiring days. I'm like, no, he's working his butt off. Like, don't worry about it. And it's like, but he's not.
Yeah.
And I think, ultimately, what it came down to, I'll tell you another mistake I made is that when people were committed, when people came to me and said, hey, I'm leaving, I fought for a lot of them. And I was like, hey, listen, like, let's chat about this. Like, I understand that you want to leave, but I think you're a great employee. Like, I think you're a great asset to the team. Let's try to find realignment. That never worked ever.
Yeah.
Because they had already mentally
It's
checked
like
out.
trying to keep the girl around who wants to break up with you.
It's like, I'll change.
It's like, nah, sorry, it's done. The ship has sailed.
And you got to be okay with that. Like, and I think now it's just, when someone comes to me, I'm thinking the last person that had left here. I mean, he walked in my office. He goes, hey, I got to tell you something. I'm like, yeah, okay, where are you going?
Yeah.
Like, and he's like, yeah. And he gives me a couple of excuses. And I'm like, hey, like, if that's better for your life, man, I fully support it. And it sucks. And like, you want everyone to hang out forever. And, and I play that scenario out with everyone that's on my team. Like, I just think about every single person that at some point they might come to me and say, hey, we got to chat. I had one last week. We hopped in a quick meeting and he was like, hey, I got to tell you something. And I'm like, holy shit. And it was something totally irrelevant.
Yeah.
But in my head, I'm like prepping. I'm like, all right, who am I hiring? Like, I gotta, like, who's going to replace this person?
So my wife works in corporate and they laid a bunch of people off, and the one guy is staying around. This was like 2 months ago, and he's staying around until December. And I just can't imagine how that works. I'm not in that world, but in my world, if somebody was like, hey, we're firing you, but we want you to stick around for the next 4 or 5 months, I'm like, what sort of productivity am I getting out of this person that I just laid off?
I think the only way that works is if you have if there's a financial incentive and they're measuring your productivity.
I guess like, to me, as soon as that's like, hey, again, girlfriend analogy, we're going to break up, but it'll be after summer, right? We can stay together until I go to college. Like, no, we're just going to break up now. We're not going to hang around. It just, I don't know.
But you think about like, all right, that's a good analogy, because you think about the girl or a guy that's just like completely in love with the other person. They might just make the best of it.
Maybe. I don't know if anyone's
think a lot
completely in love with this job.
Well, I'm not saying, yeah, but I mean, but some people might be.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to leave, but if that's how it has to be, then I'll be the best girlfriend this summer.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll keep me around. Like, maybe if I do such a good job, they'll change their mind and we'll date through the school year.
Yeah. I think I'm like you as far as employees go, and when it's time to finally part ways, that it's just gotten so far past that there's no looking back at that point. Like, I was thinking, is there anyone that I've gotten rid of that I regret getting rid of, and there's not. It was always necessary, and it always gotten to the point. And it's not that I haven't had great employees, and it's not that I wasn't super close with employees. They were in close with my family and everything else, but just by the time it was necessary to move on, there really was no moving forward. And I think some of that was the employee, some of that was self-inflicted. I know with one of my longer employees, it was like I wanted growth from them that I don't think they were ready for, and put them in a position to grow. Yeah. And when I put them in that position, I wasn't getting the productivity out of them that I needed. Like, they just weren't covering their costs. And it got to the point where I was like, I can't sustain this anymore. At this point, what I'm paying, what you have, the setup, everything else just doesn't make sense. I got to get somebody else in here, or cut ties and go back to the way I was. And I don't really have any regrets about, there wasn't anyone that I let go of where I was like, man, I really could have made that work. Like, it was definitely time for those people.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think I've ever, I don't think in life I have a lot of regrets. I don't look back and be like, oh, I should have done something different.
But I'm sure a lot of people have gotten rid of people where it's like, hey, right when COVID hit, I can't keep employees on, or I gotta get rid of these people, where they probably didn't want to, but they were trying to save face. They were trying to preserve their company, and they tough for them, and they probably regret, hey, I wish I would have made it work or buckled down and figured out how to keep that person on.
That's fair, yeah.
What do you think, from like the employee perspective, what good employees would expect from us as employers? Aside from like, benefits, good pay, the normal stuff, is there anything else that you think?
Honestly, the thing I get the most positive feedback on is showing the trajectory of their career.
Yeah.
Like, we put together that career document, and it's like, hey, here's every role that exists in this company right now, and here's the roles, the responsibilities, here's how you get a promotion, here's what, if you check these things off, you're considered this. Like, that was just, I mean, I think this was in the beginning of it. Like, this was like ChatGPT, like version 1. I sat there for 2 days creating this document.
So what happens when those people fulfill those obligations and they feel as though they've checked off the boxes, but you're like, yeah, you're not there yet?
I've never been in that position, but generally speaking, I don't think you could check off those boxes and me not feel that way.
Okay.
Like, they're strong enough. They're strong enough tasks or check boxes, whatever.
I like the way you say strong. Say it again. Strong. You really pronounce the G.
Strong. I think it's because
hot dog.
Hot dog. I think it's because I suppress my Boston accent, so I say other shit really weird.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure. Like, the employee handbook, right? It's like, okay, you check off these things, you're ready for your promotion. I know, and from the trajectory of like promotion, how you work up through the business, I know that's something that my wife in corporate America deals with, where it's like, hey, I should be at the point where I've fulfilled everything I need to be at the next step to get this promotion. What's happening? And it's, it'll reviews will be this week, reviews will be next week, reviews will be 6 months from now. And she's left companies because of it, just because what they have depicted as far as a timeline goes wasn't necessarily accurate. And it's just been frustrating for her to realize, like, I don't know how to continue moving forward, or the path forward is not as clear as you said it would be. So I think that is super important for me. I think a lot of times people just want to be seen, they want to be heard, and not necessarily every day, but I think that for a small business, one of the things that people like most about that is that you have a connection with everyone in that business. And there's some people who don't want that, right? Who want to work for a bigger company where they have somebody that they report to, and maybe they don't ever speak with the owner of the company. But I know when somebody wants to come work with me or for me, they want to work alongside me. So having that connection with me, and I'm small enough to be able to do that, and it's unavoidable, and it's also something that like makes it very difficult to hire, because you could have a weird whistling habit that I'm like, yo, I can't stand when you whistle all day long, and I'm about to fire you because it's just super annoying, right? But like a lot of times people just want to feel seen and heard, and it's not necessarily about the pay, it's not necessarily about the hours, it's just like having the ability to lean on you when they need help, or somebody bail them out of something. Like they want that safety net to fall back on.
Yeah, I mean, I think understanding where their growth trajectory is one thing that I found to be super powerful for an employee. The other thing is an insight into, to summarize, like what I do for the business.
Yeah.
And I started doing this thing, and I'm not as consistent as I would like to be, but essentially sending out an email to the entire team of, here's what's going on. We have 6 active opportunities that I'm chasing. 3, I'm going into pre-construction. This is what I'm looking at. Here's where our marketing initiative is being put. Like basically just a summary of, this is what I'm working on in the background. Because I think there is this like general sense, especially for employees, like, like in my example, it's like, what does Nick do all day? Like he just does all these, he films videos and does these social media brands and then sometimes sells projects. Like, well, it's like, no, it's more than that. And it's not to justify my workload. It's more just to give them an insight as to, here's what's happening in the background and here's the opportunities that I'm going after. Because when I started sharing that, I found that there was more confidence in my team, where they're like, wait, so there's a lot of work ahead. I'm like, yeah. They're like, well, all of our friends are telling us that their job is slowing down, and the company they're working for just has no additional leads, and they're not sure what they're going to do. I'm like, not us. I'm like, we're good. So it gives them the confidence to keep moving. Mm-hmm. And also, it's kind of like when you have another responsibility coming up, you're kind of encouraged to get what you're doing right now done. Where it's like, if you don't know if you don't have another job to go to, so all right, I'll just drag this one out until I get some feedback. So I think really just that transparency behind what's going on in the business, and here's how you can grow and be whatever you want to be within the team.
Do you, to wrap up this portion of this discussion, do you feel that there's one non-negotiable you have for hiring an employee?
Ooh, one non-negotiable for hiring an employee.
Where it's like every employee that you hire.
Be a good human being.
Yeah.
Like have a good attitude. I have dealt with way too many people that are good at their job, but they just have a shit attitude.
Yeah. It's like a cancer.
I struggled with one for years, truthfully. And finally I just got to a point. It was eating me alive. And finally I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I was like, you're fired. Like, I've tried to work with your attitude and I just can't deal with it. And they were I'm laughing and I shouldn't, but like they felt as though they were blindsided. I'm like,
you didn't see this coming.
We've been talking about this for like 2 years, and it just, you're great at your job. I just can't deal with the attitude anymore. And it's crazy because, I mean, you mentioned firing someone because of their annoying whistle. Like when I hear that, I'm like, yeah, there's plenty of people I have wanted to fire for some annoying thing, like having a bad attitude. But
yeah, I
have now at this point been coached around like, here's what you can and can't say when you fire someone.
Yep.
Because we had one, that I was fully convinced that if I fired them for the wrong reason, they would sue me.
Yeah.
And we had talked to our lawyer, and they were like, I was like, hey, here's the situation. Here's what's going on. This is why we're going to be letting this person go. And they were like, do not say that, because they will pin it on XYZ. So I'll never forget. I went into that. I fired them, and I was very like I gave them a reason, but they like returned and like, wait, is it also because I'm being very vague here, but like, is it also because of XYZ? I'm like, no.
Yeah,
And I'm
no,
like,
it has nothing to do with that.
I'm like, I know what you're doing. Like, I cannot believe this is playing out the way that I thought it would. I was like, nope. And they were like, it just feels like it is. I'm like, it can feel whatever way you want, man.
To be transparent, I didn't fire the guy because he whistled, but literally it was like the second day on the job, and I recall texting my wife and be like, this isn't gonna last long. This guy is an annoying, nervous whistler, and it's 8 hours a day of just whistle. Oh my God. I'm like, dude, I will go buy as much gum as you need. Just stop whistling right now, especially when you get frustrated and you're trying to figure something out and I just hear whistling in the background.
Dude, I don't know. Popping bubbles is pretty
annoying. I broke up with a girl once because she chewed ice. Like at dinner, we would go out to eat and she would just finish her water and then chew ice. And I'm like, dude, I can't I sound like I'm dating like a goat right now. And like my kids know about that story, so they'll mess with me and chew ice on purpose just to annoy me.
That's amazing. I want to just add one point.
Yeah.
So, going back to firing, because I think it is one of the most difficult things that we have to do as business owners. And there was one I needed to let go of, and I didn't want to. And I was chatting with a mentor, like a business mentor of mine, and we were talking about him specifically. And he's like, Nick, if you guys didn't work together, would you guys still hang out? And I was like, probably not. And he's like, then what are you so afraid of?
Yeah.
And I have come to realize, especially I think in a role of owning a business, is that, we talk about a lot is, we don't have a large friend. I don't have a large friend group. Like I have friends around, but it's not like I'm constantly with them.
Yep.
People I'm with every day are people that work with me. And we create friendships out of work. But the reality is like, if we decided to part ways, would we still remain friends? There's definitely some that would, but the majority of them wouldn't. You'd move on because it would be too much work. The only reason that you hang out so much is because you work together.
Yep.
And I think we over index that in the decision making around firing someone because we're afraid that we'll lose a friend.
I saw somebody at the airport yesterday had a shirt on that said, "Why do you care if everybody likes you? You don't even like everyone, bro." I was like, stupid shirt, but kind of true.
Yeah. I don't get those shirts, man. Like they're such an.
I just can't imagine wearing it in public, but
there's so many shirts that I see people wear. I'm like, how did you look at that and be like, oh yeah, I'll wear that.
Need.
And it's like, some wildly inappropriate shirts.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And like, it's always the same, like overweight white guy walking through the mall or the airport. And I am like, dude, like, I know you bought that shirt thinking it was funny and then have consistently worn it thinking it was funny. And it's not funny.
It's just like, for attention.
In fact, you're making everyone, including myself, uncomfortable. And I'm 50 yards away from you.
So I was at the Fine Home Building Summit a few weeks ago up at Endicott College, and I was one of the maybe two people who was invited to speak. There was a lot of people who were invited to speak, but maybe two people who were invited to speak more so on craft than it was very design driven, building science, performance driven. So I told Brian Pontalillo that I basically felt as though he threw me under the bus to go up there and talk about craft and basically bash on building science and that he was going to have everyone hate me. And I'm fairly certain he did a decent job at that, but I tried to do my best to weave it in and be as delicate as possible. But I have felt, and this is going to be definitely a polarizing topic and something that I'll probably get a lot of flack for, but I feel that we have gone at times too far in the other direction with building science, where we should be focusing on an approach to building science that can be applied to the masses rather than this very small percentage of people who are building to this standard for their own needs, for their own program. But realistically, the amount of resources, time, and money that are going into these are not going to make an impact on the world. They're not going to make an impact on the environment. To me, the entire push for building science should be to be able to have an impact on the environment, on natural resources, on commodities. And I think that a lot of what people are doing at the forefront of this, they're spearheading a movement that's trying to set a standard, but at the same time, I think that they're all trying to lay the golden egg. And I think that it's creating a product and processes that are very hard to replicate, that are not tested, and that I don't know how durable they actually are. And it's tough to have a conversation with the people who are on that side of things. And it's not to say that I'm not, but the type of work that I do typically isn't following a heavy building science background. But it seems that the people on that side of the building science and the performance, it's a very dogmatic approach where this is the way it has to be done, and we can't see anything other than that. And they probably feel the same way when you look at it, where people are like, houses should breathe and everything else. But it just, with all the products that we're using, all the systems, all the envelopes that we're designing that haven't been tested in real world, right? In theory, this works on paper, but in real world, does this actually work? What's the durability? What's the long-term performance of this? I just feel like we could find an approach that maybe is somewhere in between where we are now on both sides of the fence within like the building science community.
I have a lot of thoughts about this. High level, I completely agree with you. And regardless if it's controversial or not, I think there's a lot of reasons why you and I feel that way. And one of them is just kind of what you're saying about this golden egg is everyone's trying to prove like theirs is the best. This is the best way to do it. This is the way you should do it. And there's no consistency behind that. And I also think that the product promotion is hurting this, where it's like people are so up in arms. Like, should I use Zip or should I use Blueskin or should I use Sega or should I use Adhero? It doesn't fucking matter. Yeah. Like, just use what you prefer and use it to the best of your ability. Like it comes down to the install, and everyone's gonna be like, no, that's not true. Like some of this stuff. Yes, you're right. There are performance characteristics between them that perform better, but ultimately they all can do the job if you're considering what job it needs to do and how that quote unquote wall assembly is put together. Now, I also think that two other points. A lot of these decisions are made in a vacuum. They're only focused on the WRB. They're only focused on the HVAC. And when you really sit there, I think about White Oak and a project that we were in pre-con in New Hampshire. Both had the same exact scenario where we were in design. House was not even built. In design, we get the HVAC equipment sheet from the HVAC engineer, and the equipment's massive. And he's like, yeah, your heating load's totally fine, but your cooling load's through the roof. So you need this big equipment. I'm like, but why? And he's like, well, give me this kind of like high level reason. I'm like, I end up saying in the Zoom, I was like, what is driving the cooling load to be so much? And he goes, well, the glass at the back of the building. I'm like, what about it? And he goes, you're letting too much of the solar heat through that glass.
Yeah.
I'm like, so why not change that glass? And he goes, oh, I mean, if you can change the glass, then yeah, that will help tremendously. I'm like, why isn't that being proposed? And he's like, well, I thought the house was built. I'm like, why would the house be built? I'm like, we're in design, and we changed the glass and we reduced the cooling equipment by 50% in size. It's the same thing on this New Hampshire project. They had I can't tell you how many hours they were going around and around about this HVAC parapet up on the roof of this house, and they couldn't fit 3 condensers. I'm like, guys, why is there 3 condensers? And it was just like, this was like meeting number 3. Finally, I was like, why is there 3? He goes, well, because of I don't remember if it was I think it was the heating load. I'm like, walk me through that. Like, well, because this and that and this and that. And I'm like, so what if we were to bump up the insulation value on the walls? They're like, yeah, you could probably get away with just 2. I'm like, okay. So we look at it. They don't even have the right insulation calced. I'm like, you guys aren't even factoring in that we have exterior insulation on this house. And he's like, we do? I'm like, yeah, continuous exterior. Like, it's you. Like, why are you so focused? Like, you're so hyper focused on only what you're doing and ignoring everything else that's going on.
Yeah.
And I think that plays a huge role into, like, especially some of these failures. The last thing I will say is that I think, well, I just completely lost my train of thought.
As far as the HVAC,
no, it was
the glazing. You were saying that these decisions were made in a vacuum.
Yeah, I know, but I had a third point where it's we were talking about the golden egg. We were talking about decisions in a vacuum, and the fact that there's at some point the rate of return is just so small.
Correct.
And like, we're making these tiny little changes. You know, what is that saying?
To me, it just feels, when you get to that point, it's not something that can be applied at scale. It's too expensive.
Diminishing return.
Yeah. So like what those people are doing is because it's what they want to do. It's because their builder or their designer wants to design that. Mm-hmm. And they have the means to be able to do that. To me, I think that the impact, or the greater impact, is to be able to simplify what we're doing, to be able to apply it to the masses, and to be able to build more efficient homes at scale. Not to be able to build 2 homes a year, 3 homes a year, 4 homes a year at this very high level that, to be quite honest, people are throwing shit at the wall and seeing what works. And then if it fails, it fails, and then figuring out why it fails. And I don't, if you want to do that on your own house, that's fine.
Right.
But I don't know if we should be doing that on clients' houses. And I see a lot of, like, so much of it is with the wall assemblies that we're trying to build now, and exterior insulation, and the energy code that they're putting in place. And it just seems as though we're complicating things. And there's many ways to do this that shouldn't cost as much, that don't need to cost as much, and can be much simpler. But to create an exterior envelope where you have all of these different drainage planes and flashings and these acrylic-based adhesives that need to go this way and then that way, and then you have to make sure that you have bug screen in this area to let it vent out. And it's like, one person gets that detail wrong, and you tell me that these designers and these builders are going and checking that everywhere. They're not. I've been on job sites where they install Tyvek wrong and nobody catches it.
Right.
Like, it's just not happening. And to me, the risk is greater than the reward, even from like an exterior insulation standpoint, or a continuous, because it's not exterior, it doesn't have to be exterior, right? A continuous insulation that can go on the inside of your walls. You can have a traditional cladding. You could have your wall studs and your wall cavities filled with insulation, and then you can have 1.5 inch service cavity with horizontal strapping, 1.5 inch rigid insulation in that does not affect the exterior envelope. You're not putting window bucks. You're not having to come up with all these crazy drainage plans. You can use standard details on the outside that people already aren't getting right, and not have to worry about dew point and potential water in your walls. And to me, like, that's the answer. And it's not as sexy, and it's not as state of the art and everything else. But why can't
Well,
we do that?
well, you can, but I won't. I'm going to disagree with you here. That is not necessarily the answer. You can't necessarily ignore dew point at that point. And that I think is the problem, is that people make a decision like that. I'm not saying that your design is wrong, but it might not work for every climate. It also, the bigger issue that you're kind of zooming in on here is the fact that when you don't do it 100% accurately, it's okay. If you don't do it 100%, now you have these like potential for massive failures, and it has to be perfect in order for it to operate perfect. And I think that is absolutely a big issue. But
Yeah, nothing that anyone does is perfect,
right,
especially when it comes to the exterior.
and you can't assume that it is. So like, we do exterior insulation, we do some of the complicated details, but it's, we try to approach it in a way that makes sense, and like, it's, there's consistency behind it, and that we don't purposely overcomplicate it. Our cladding details tend to be overcomplicated. I literally posted a video called that was titled "How We Overcomplicated This Brick Cladding," because ultimately, like, the cladding was very complicated, very expensive, and could have been done more simply. But in terms of the wall assembly, we try to keep it in a way that is easier to accomplish without the potential for massive failure. Going back to my diminishing return comment for a second, one of the comments I got on YouTube this weekend was talking about our exterior insulation and how we had, what do we have? We have 5 inches of insulation on white oak, and they're like, that's not the right way to do it. You're supposed to do 2 layers of 2.5 and offset the joints so you don't get thermal bridging through the joint. I'm like, guys, I have fucking 9 foot by 9 foot pieces of glass on the side of the house.
Yeah.
Like,
It's like insulated window box that people talk about. Like, don't fucking put in windows. If you're that concerned, like, don't put in windows.
It's, guys, like, you're talking about a seam. I get that, like, sure, best practice might be to overlap the seam. We're talking about microscopic differences. We put the 3-inch PVC rain leaders in our insulation layer. They're like, dude, you lost all your exterior insulation. I'm like, on less than 1% of my entire exterior wall is made up of 3-inch PVC rain leaders, guys. Like, and I think that's where like, it's this constant, like, our Echo Pond project, people are freaking out because our windows sit on the concrete, and it's like, that's going to be a thermal bridge issue. I'm like, yeah, so is any sill of the door. Like, every door sill is continuous from the outside to the inside.
Yeah.
And they're typically aluminum.
It's literally the same thing.
It's the same thing.
See, the biggest issue I have, like you just alluded to, is that the way that we're building now, the stakes are so much higher. When you build a house that's this tight, the details need to be critical. They need to be durable, and they need to be dialed, and somebody needs to be ensuring that they're done right, and they should be proven and tested. And I don't think that they are. And I think that they work on paper, but I don't know how many horror stories I've heard of people putting these designs in place and their walls rotting out and nobody knowing about it. And yeah, that does happen with older technology, but typically it's because, like, an egregious error or omission on a builder or an installer's behalf. These people think that they're doing right by these jobs, and they aren't. And I'm, even from like the tape perspective, right? We've moved to all tapes with these acrylic adhesives, and I asked the question, what's the lifespan on these acrylic adhesives? Oh, they're dialed, they're bomb proof, that they're amazing. Like, what about metal?
Not an answer.
Yeah, but like, what about metal, right? Metal lasts 50, 100 years. These acrylic adhesives, maybe 30 years max, assuming they were installed in a dry environment, probably that wasn't freezing cold, that was clean, and then rolled properly, layered properly. Like, 30 years max, to me, when we're building these homes, that's not a very long time. My house is almost 200 years old, and yeah, it's not efficient, but it's not like rotting and filled with mold.
Mhm.
And we're moving so far away from that in order to solve one problem that I think that we're creating more problems. And that's what I fear. And there was another conversation where they were having where, I guess it was maybe an ERV in the house and it was built down in Florida. And depending on the temperature and the relative humidity, you shouldn't run your bath fan on this high performance house when it's a certain temperature and a certain relative humidity out. And I'm like,
Tell your 8-year-old that.
dude, but it makes sense. I get why. Yeah, because the relative humidity outside is higher than it is inside. And by you running the bath fan, you're actually introducing more moisture into your house. But if we're building these expensive, high performance homes and you have to worry about when you cannot turn on your bath fan, to me, that's like, how is this progress?
So, but here's one of the issues with that. Now they're like, you know what, you're right. Let's put a sensor and it will do it automatically. And the problem with this is like we just keep making it more complicated.
Yeah.
Now you need a sensor, and now you need someone to understand how that sensor gets installed and set up and programmed and making sure that continues to work. So we add these things and we just keep adding on. Like it's like my kid making his own ice cream sundae. It just like keeps adding shit on, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, it's like, toppling over.
Just like when you go to the soda machine and just get all flavors.
So many analogies.
Slurpee machine.
But
I don't know.
But that they solve it by making it more complicated. Now, I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm not saying you shouldn't have an automatic humidistat that turns on the bath fan. I'm not saying that. But this is how this decision tree ends up happening, is that they realize there's an issue, they create a solution, then they realize that solution doesn't work in a human scenario, so then they automate it. Then they require a human to introduce the automation, but then who's monitoring it? Then how do we know if it's working?
Or if it fails.
Or when it fails, like how do we know? And then we only know when it rots out, and then we go back and be like, well, that's because the sensor blew. It's like, guys, like now you have like we are create. It is such a finite line of whether it's working or catastrophic, and that I think is the line we need to thicken. Like we need to have some grace here.
Yeah, and I think that we have to understand the stakes when we're making these decisions. And most sub trades and everything else, when we're coming from a different building style, right? This is all for the sake of progress. And I absolutely appreciate that. But we can't just go from 0 to 100 miles an hour and then figure out what we screwed up after the fact. Like maybe this has happened every generation and this is just our generation's part of this. But it seems as though most of the failures that we had before were egregious failures, and they were layering failures or flashing issues. It wasn't necessarily product detail related. It was people just not knowing what they're doing. We're still going to have that, but now we're integrating and implementing products and systems that are highly complicated for the sake of even just like, right, we want to conserve natural resources. So you want to wrap this building with tape 500 times, and you want to build to this level where it's like, how many extra days are we having 5 people drive their fossil fuel burning cars back and forth to the job site to do this extra work? Like, what are we really saving in the long run? Is it 6 of one, half dozen of the other? And I'm not for progress. I'm not against progress. I want progress. I want people to build well. But I don't think that it has to be like, it never should be on either extreme. To me, I get very nervous and anxious when we're building or doing anything on the extremes, the low end of the extreme, the high end of the extreme. If you want to build at that upper echelon of the extreme, do it on your own house, do it with your own money, do it with your own family in the house, not for a client, right? To me, don't design something for a client that may potentially fail because that's what you want to do. Like if you discussed this with the client and say, hey, we're really trying this here. It's never been done before. It's never been tested. We don't know if this is going to last 2 years, 5 years, 20 years, 30 years. What do you think they're going to say? Like, is there another option? right? You're doing this most likely to feed your own ego or to try and create that golden egg or design something. And to me, it's like, do that. This isn't a piece of art that you're designing for somebody. It's somebody's house that they're going to live in and raise their family and everything else. And if that's their program, fine. But if it's not, let them build the way that they want to build. And I truly believe that there's a way to build a very energy efficient house that's not as complicated, and that we should be spending more time advocating for those solutions and those practices more so than building on the extreme ends of the spectrum. That's
Yeah.
at least my personal opinion, because I just feel that, right, change needs to happen. And in order to make a substantial change in anything, you need to be able to reach a massive amount of people, and it has to be somewhere in between. Houses are already unaffordable. Let's not make them more unaffordable.
Yeah, I mean, I think I I have similar thoughts. I think we are naturally going to continue to see more complicated wall details and ultimately trying to make more efficient homes. But I think that we need to stop trying to do it a new way every single time and find consistency behind it. And because, one of the things that is super frustrating, I shared some photos of a house that was being built by a tract developer with you a couple weeks ago. But it's like these homes end up getting built with these like complicated roof lines and these weird intersections. And, and that's just a normal house with just wrap and siding on it. Now,
Yeah.
then you're going to start seeing exterior insulation details. Like now it's just going to be even more complicated. I mean, White Oak and Echo Pond, they're both very simple roof lines, like the simplest roof lines you could have. And they were complicated to add exterior insulation on. I couldn't even imagine trying to do that on what these, kind of development type, spec track homes. Like it would be an absolute nightmare. Those things are already leaking and have multiple lawsuits. It's like now you're going to add this more complicated wall assembly with exterior insulation that you need to have, done correctly and no line, like no grace on whether or not it works or it
It
doesn't
needs
work.
to be perfect.
Right. It's like I'm watching a home that is considered to be like your complete baseline D plus home be built, and it's being built incorrectly.
And the other thing is, like, a lot harder to know when it is leaking. It's the issues, same thing with spray foam, right? Where it's like,
Right.
it's the same reason why I don't think most homes should be built in stucco. Leave that to commercial and like EIFS, where it's a foam board on the outside, not wood with lath. And you can't tell when it leaks. There's no signs on the exterior.
I know.
Maybe you get signs on the interior, but like, what if? And I'm not saying that you need to build houses to leak, but like that's why old homes worked, because they dried
can
out.
dry,
We're
yeah.
now building homes that don't dry, so we need to be extra prudent and extra diligent to make sure that water does not get in. And I don't think that we're there, and I don't think that we're building systems that make it easy to guarantee water's not getting in. And like I said, from a durability perspective, dude, how long's tape going to last? And you can tell me, yeah, it's like, I don't want to have to replace tape in 30 years and rip the whole outside of my house off.
Right.
I don't want to, especially with like all the layers and shit that are on there now. Like, I don't want to. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't want to have to pull windows and redo taped window flashings in 30 years when metal pans were fine before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's obviously I'm on the other side of the spectrum when it comes to this, and I'm absolutely not against it, and I absolutely appreciate what everyone's doing on the forefront. And I've had many conversations with people. I want people to ask the right questions and educate themselves and
I think that's the
ensure
key, yeah.
and ensure that they're making the right decisions and why. And then if you're doing this on projects, you need to make sure that you are managing these details. It's not like, hey, the exterior guys are here, we'll swing back at the end of the day. It's like, no, this is what my client wants. We need to charge somebody to be there to manage this, to make sure that every detail gets executed properly, because one wrong flashing and it could be a catastrophic issue for that home and those clients and your business.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing for me. So just obviously a couple of things that have been on my mind that I feel strongly about, and probably get some flack for, and I'm fine for that. Again, I fully support the building science industry and what everyone's doing, and there's got progress has to happen in our industry. I don't think we should just be using and building the way that we have for 100 years because it works fine. But I think that as we're moving forward and as there's a million new products coming to market every single year, that we should ensure that what we're doing is durable enough to last, and that our details are able to be executed in a simple manner.
Yeah, guys, if you, I'm curious at your take on this. So drop us a comment on Instagram. We should get one of the building science guys on.
Let's get Ben on again. Ben has a very practical approach to it too.
I think we should get Ben Bogey back on.
John Deans. I spoke with him.
Oh yeah. Yep. We just did a video with him as well.
John's great too. Or both of them.
Let's do it.
Sweet. We'll have to email them.
All right. Guys, as always, we appreciate you listening. Head over to moderncraftsman.co. We get some t-shirts. If you guys didn't already get one, it is the original Founders t-shirt. We have them up for a limited time now. They are on the shop. And then also Contractor Coalition Summit. We get a lot of messages just regarding what the event is. So let's do a quick recap here. Contractor Coalition Summit, it is in Chicago. This is a 30-person maximum event. It is essentially myself, Tyler, Brad, Morgan, and we sit up there for 2.5 days, and we give you the entire playbook to our business. We walk you through step by step on how we're, doing marketing, lead generation, lead conversion, contracts, how we're budgeting, how we're estimating, and how we're running our projects efficiently and, most importantly, profitably. So we have a handful of tickets left for Chicago. If you guys are interested, head over to contractorcoalitionsummit.com. When you go to checkout, use the code MC and you'll get $2,500 off your ticket price. That is only for people that listen to the podcast here. We'd love to see you guys there. If there is any questions, feel free to DM myself at Nick Schiffer or at TRG Home Concepts Tyler. We're happy to answer those, but we'd love to see you there, and we'd love to help you build a more profitable business.
So one thing that I've spoken with everyone about, right? A lot of people feel that this is reserved just for bigger builders, custom home builders. And I want to be able to get some smaller contractors there, possibly some remodelers. So I'm going to speak to everyone to see if we can get some people in on, right? You maybe you don't build $10 million worth of homes a year, but if you reach out to me, email me, Tyler at trghomeconcepts.com. I'll see if I can figure something out to get you in. If you're a smaller remodeling contractor, if you do additions, if you're doing that $1 million, $2 million and less, and you want to attend this, but it just seems like it's unattainable for you right now, reach out to me. I'll see what sort of strings I can pull for maybe a handful of people just to be able to get some smaller remodeling contractors in there and experience this event, and let us know what you think. So shoot me an email, Tyler at trghomeconcepts.com if you're interested in that, and we can have a discussion.
See you guys next week.